We're part two.
Here's part two, everyone. It's Greg Bush on the other side of the screen. And so, what I thought I would do for this is let you kind of go over your history as far as you lived in Montreal. We're born and raised in Montreal.
I was born to two very poor sharecroppers, and I had a very you remember that movie, The Jerk? With
Yes.
Steve Martin. I was born to two black sharecroppers. He's the white guy in the family, and this scene where he discovers that he's not black because
Right.
his toes were wiggling on 2 and 4 or whatever. What a funny movie! That's like not too long ago. Oh, I'm going to digress here. Not too long ago, I was made privy to the fact that there's such a thing as storytelling clubs.
Okay.
So I'm okay with this now, but I was very wary at the time. The second in command at Vancouver Island University, the vice president and provost, kind of took a jazz fan, kind of took a shine to me, and I was like, "That's okay. He's a super nice guy." And so we hang out the odd time, or I go see him, or I run into him, or whatever. And it was his suggestion. He's like, "We should go for a beer sometime." And I was like, "Okay." Because I was like, well, I'm not going to ask the vice president to go for a beer because that could be perceived as some kind of schmoozing, you know. I said, but he invited me, so I'm going to go. So anyway, I meet his. He ended up being a widower, and then he met somebody, and so I met that woman, and she was a storyteller. So she contacts me. They're having a storytelling thing, and they in the middle of it, when they have a bit of an intermission, they like to have entertainment. Could I recommend a student to go, provide the 20 minutes of entertainment? And I was like, have I got just the perfect person for you? She plays piano and sings and everything. A lovely young girl. So anyway, so then I get invited, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go. I'm curious about the storytelling, and I want to go support the student, right? So anyway, I go to this thing, and they warn me. They're like, okay, so just before the intermission, they're going to ask who is brand new to this, and you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to introduce yourself and say a couple of things. I was like, yeah, that's no problem. They're like, great.
Uh-oh.
So anyway, sure enough, it happens. So I put my hand up, my turn comes, and they're like, well, stand up and tell us about yourself. And I was like, well, I'm Greg, and my friend Dave and friends Dave and Sandy brought me, and I teach at the university, and I sort of know who the entertainment is, and I was like, I'm happy to be here. And they're like, somebody else out, tell us your last name. And I was like, well, I can't do that because I'm in the witness protection program. So of course the whole place falls out, and my buddy's doing this. He's like,
like I said, uh-oh.
You brought me. So anyway, that was pretty funny. So yeah, I can only share so much of my background with everybody because I'm still in the witness protection program. But having grown up in Montreal in the language thing, and I wanted to be a professional musician. I wanted to play the trumpet. And my trumpet teacher, Real, who straightened me out on the trumpet, French Canadian guy, but very fluently bilingual. I mean, this is the guy that told me he looked in the mirror to practice putting his tongue between his teeth to say the, because the TH sound isn't part of the French language. That's why they either say da or za. So he's in front of the mirror, getting his tongue through his teeth. So he spoke with a hint of an accent, but fluently bilingual. And he kind of straightened me out. And I would have been like just getting ready to get married. So I would have been like 25 or something, 24, 25. And he was recommending me for one of the posh gigs in Montreal. There was two. There was one called the Caf Cons that was at a hotel. It was like a nightclub. It was a show, So 6 nights a week there'd be a show, maybe 5. So there'd be a dark night, maybe the rehearsal night, then the show. And it would change every week, every other week. And then there was another one at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, which is the same kind of deal. And he was recommending me. They went through some changes. The person that had been the band leader, I forget which one it was, probably the Cap Cons, had been doing it for like 25 or 30 years. And then the management decided they needed to upgrade it or update it or whatever. So the band leader changed, and they were looking for a trumpet player. And my trumpet teacher was filling in. He did not want to work 5 nights a week anymore. He was like probably in his mid 50s. And he was like, I'm done with those kinds of gigs, you know. So he did one-offs, and there was a studio scene. He was doing all of that stuff, and he really liked teaching. He was getting into that. So he was recommending me for this gig, and he told me, he's like, the band leader said, well, what kind of experience has he got? He's like, well, he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. He plays very well. I'll be able to cut the gig. He's like, well, I want to have somebody with experience. And, you know, Rael went to bat for me. He's like, well, how are these young guys going to get experience unless, you know, us old guys start passing them, giving them the opportunities. And he was like, yeah, that's not my problem, sort of thing. So I ended up not getting the gig. And I'm pretty sure it was a francophone, which is fine. I get that. So there was that, you know, facing me. And I think of you mentioned Dave Rice, you know, your saxophone teacher when you were in high school. The story that he liked to tell, and I love repeating it, he was in a saxophone quartet with 3 francophones. And, you know, in terms of people not knowing how to kick somebody out or replace them and stuff like that, they changed the location and never told them. So this is a true story. So
Nice.
he shows up to the rehearsals like, where the fuck is everybody? Where the heck is everybody? You know?
Too late.
And,
You already said it.
and I'll try and keep this PG, or not PG, whatever. R, thank you. So, of course, then he finds out that he was replaced by a francophone. You know, at the time, Joanne wanted to be a school teacher. Well, they were closing English schools left and right. You know, people were leaving the city in droves with the separatists and all of that bullshit. And Dave Luker, who was the best man at my wedding, he'd already moved
And
out.
drummer.
And drummer, yeah. And he moved out. His wife, I believe they're still together. She was an air hostess, and she was from Montreal. And they were stationing them in Calgary. So she went to Calgary. He went along too. And then he stayed in contact with me. He's like, well, the economy's rolling, the oil patch. I don't think we really understood the oil patch back in those days. He's like, there's plenty of gigs. You should come and check it out. So I went in 79, the year before I got married. And I went for like a couple of weeks just to check it out. That was my first time meeting John Reid. And I think I met Sandy Barker as well, because Sandy had been in Montreal. I think he's from the East Coast somewhere, Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. And he spent some time in Montreal. He was having his trumpet lesson either right before me or right after me with Rael. He studied with Rael. So I kind of reconnected with him and hung out with Dave and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this seems like it'd be kind of a cool idea, you know? So then the next year after getting married, just pack up the van and go
Load
west,
up the truck and move to Beverly.
There you go. Just go west, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up in Calgary, and Joanne she graduated university. I hadn't. And she got some kind of day job or whatever, because it was pretty easy to get day jobs with the economy and the oil industry rocking. And then she got her ed degree at U of C and became a school teacher. And I had a couple of different part-time jobs and stuff, and until I got my name known and stuff, and started to work. And one of the part-time, well, Dave Luker got me in on it because he was doing some part-time stuff too. It was like a delivering snack boxes to offices.
Really?
So
Okay.
this was like you went in the morning, so you were done by noon, you know. And if you once you got the knack of it, you went from like 8 till you were probably done by 11 or 11:30. So you started at 8, you showed up at the warehouse, you loaded up the van, which I had. You needed a van. You loaded up the van with all of the snack boxes, and you had your route, and you went to all of these places, and you took the old snack box out, replaced it with a new one, and then you count the money, and it's usually like, let's say there was 25, 30 snacks in each box, probably more like 50 snacks in each box. Well, there was enough money for probably like half of that, because people are just like grabbing the snacks and like, oh, I don't have any change, I'll do it later, and then they'd forget. And then there's always the ones that are going to steal the stuff anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
now the guy that was running this, he'd figured the shit out. He knew how many he knew how many he needed to sell to, like, not just break even, but to make some money. So even though you might have been short half the box, he was still doing okay. But it was like, please try and chase down the money. So then you had to say, okay, the box is short, $13. Can people like pay up? And then the secretary is like, the receptionist is like, oh shit, I'll give you the $13 and then collect it and this and that. So I did that for a while. And then I delivered some kind of a seniors newspaper that came out once a month. And I delivered that to seniors homes and stuff. And it was my own time, so I could spread it out over 2 or 3 days to do it once a month. So that and as an hourly wage, it paid quite well. Um, and then gradually, I didn't have to do that shit anymore because I got busy enough playing music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so
Okay. And then you were in Calgary from 80 to what? About
80 to 89, and then
okay.
that's when I got the gig at Red Deer College. And I don't know if
Hour
I
and a
could.
half up north of here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you might know the story, but I'll try and make sure that the names will be changed to keep those to keep the innocent, or however the hell that goes. But it was Kevin Bradley that calls me up in Calgary, and he's like, "So, Greg,
Former trumpet student of yours, yes?
former trumpet student who I believe is still teaching in Thailand,
Okay.
and excuse me, his parents live just half an hour north of here in Parksville. So I've hung out with Kevin a few times as over the years here that he's come to visit his parents. So anyway, he calls me up and he's like, "Yeah, so so and so who was teaching at Red Deer College, he's like, he's no longer teaching there, and this would have been end of February, maybe." So into the second term, but not at the end of the second term.
And this was in 1989 or 1990 or
This
what do you figure?
it would have been the spring of '89.
Okay.
Started there in the fall of '89. So he's telling me this, and I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." I was like, "Okay, Kevin." I said, "Actually, I'm kind of busy right now. I gotta go," because I was thinking, I know who Ken Mallet is. I gotta call Ken Mallet. So of course, I get off the phone with Kevin. I call Ken Mallet right away, man. I'm like, "So I understand there might be an opening at the college." And he's like, "Wow, news certainly travels quickly." So he said, "Actually, there was an opening." And he said, because of it being in the middle of the term, he says, we did have to fill that opening pretty darn quickly. But if you're interested, he says, you might want to apply. He says, and we'll look at it for the fall. And I was like, yeah, I'm very interested because I wanted, that was my career path or whatever. I knew at some point I wanted to start teaching at post-secondary. And I was doing my master's degree at University of Calgary at the time, which was so enjoyable in hindsight because I have so many good stories
I
about
know. Maybe we'll share some of them over
the bullshit at University of Calgary. No offense to Jeremy Brown if he's watching this,
here.
because Jeremy would be the only shining light.
He understands, I think. I think he
So,
understands.
but I mean that's so long ago. Maybe things have changed. So anyway, so I apply for the job and I get an interview and I freaking got the job. So I moved to Red Deer and was still able to because I figured, okay, rather than live in Calgary and drive 90 minutes each
Yeah.
way 5 days a week or at least 4 days a week,
Yeah. No kidding.
why not do it the other way around and live in Red Deer and drive to Calgary for gigs on Fridays and Saturdays, which made more sense. So I wasn't really available for gigs during the week, which it wasn't really that many, but the gigs were on the weekend. So I was able to do that. So I moved to Red Deer. And then the position kind of got whittled down to nothing. And there was a woman who was on leave. I forget her, Coombs, maybe Cheryl was her first name. And she was on a sabbatical for a year and a leave of absence for a year while she got her PhD, doctorate or PhD.
Mhm.
And then so as the positions are being whittled down and then she comes back, in terms of seniority, I wasn't really in the running for that. So my position was eliminated. And then they hired me part-time because there was a couple of courses. It wasn't enough for a full-time load, but they hired me part-time. And it was interesting, it says like So the dean calls me and he's like, there's 2 or 3 trumpet students. We'd like you to teach the trumpet students. I was like, great. And he's like, but we can't add them to your teaching load because we just don't have the money for that position. I was like, so what are you trying to tell me? He's like, well, we could do it as an extra, an add-on to a contract position rather than a salary position. And there was something about it that he said, but it's got to be on the QT or something. And I was like, so if I want to continue doing this, I basically have to lie. And if I choose to not lie, I don't have the extra income. He's like, yeah, that's kind of harsh, but that sums it up. And I was like, well, I live here. I got to like do something for my income, you know? So we did it. And then that's when I applied to McGill
Okay.
and I got into McGill. Yeah. You falling off your chair or what?
No, I'm okay. I'm good. No.
So, because I hadn't finished, I'd done all the coursework for my master's degree at University of Calgary. And, you know, silly me, oh, yeah, I can do the thesis and all of that bullshit while I'm teaching at Red Deer College. Yeah, sure, right. Full-time job, and you're trying to wrap that up.
Hmm.
And it was such a positive experience, you know. And then McGill decides to start that jazz program, master's jazz studies. And I applied and I got in. I was like, well, the hell with U of C. I'm going to go do that, you know.
Hmm.
And that, of course, opened up all sorts of doors.
Well, how long were you at Red Deer College? How long were you teaching there from
Three,
89 to or 90,
yeah,
whatever it was?
3 full years.
So
So
to
eight,
about 93 or
yeah,
92?
till the spring of 92, yeah.
Okay.
And then I would, oh, hold on a sec, 89, 90, 91. Yeah. And then I would have gone in fall of 92 would have been when I started at McGill.
Okay. You went to McGill, right? You didn't do correspondence or anything. You actually
No,
went.
I moved to Montreal.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was all grown up and living back with my mom again, which was lots of fun. But the rent was right.
So
The
there you
price.
go.
So and moms, you know, I'd be leaving in the morning and she'd be like, "Really? You need to put a sweater on. It's supposed to be chilly today." I'm like, "Yes, mom." And then my favorite one was like, "You got enough money for the day?" I was like, "Yes, mom." I think I was 38.
Yeah.
So finally, I was like, okay, the next time you ask me if I have enough money, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to take yours and spend it. Like, okay, I'm just being your
Yeah.
mom. I was like, yeah, no, I get that.
Well, my
So
mom is 86. I'm almost 54, and I still get things like that too.
there you
So
go. Oh, yeah,
you just never stop being their kid. And you're the youngest, and so am I. So I
yeah,
think there's something else there too.
there you
So
go.
yeah, I think there's
And
something with
then,
that.
and so I did all the coursework in the 1 year, and then I had to go back for my recital, and I had to do a recording project, but I didn't have to be there the whole semester. So the second year in the fall, I went for 2 weeks, probably around the middle end of September, for a couple of weeks just to make
Hmm.
sure everything was on track. And then I went in November. I went back for 2 weeks to do my recital and all that stuff. And then as far as the recording project, they didn't care where you lived as long as you did it. So.
And
Yeah.
so did you go right from McGill because you then got hired on at Mohawk College in Hamilton? Did you go right from Montreal to Hamilton?
There might have been a year in between, and I think there was a year in between. And I remember telling one of the cats at McGill, and I got this from Jeremy Brown. Hi, Jeremy, if you're watching this, probably. But Jeremy was the one that told me that, and I probably would have figured this shit out on my own too. I just went through, I got a book, Canadian Colleges and Universities, and I went through the whole book of who had a music program and then which school had something that might have resembled a jazz program. And I wrote a generic letter and I sent it off saying who I was. I included my resume and was looking for a job. Jeremy told me that that's what he had done, and that was what kind of got the door open at University of Calgary.
Oh, really? Okay. I
I
didn't know
think
that.
so. I'd have to check with Jeremy. It's been a long time, and of course we well I do. I've heard other people say the same thing. Is you kind of skew things in your memory over a period of time, and the recollection of it changes. I'm pretty sure Jeremy said that, and Lois Shoxy, no relation to Noam Chomsky.
but some of the same letters.
but an awful lot of the same letters.
Mm-hmm.
She saw his letter and asked him to apply because there was a position or something. And of course, Jeremy got it. And
And she was
Mohawk,
the dean that hired me back as a sessional at UC for 13 years.
there you go.
She was the department head at the time. Did I
She's
say
still,
dean? It's department head.
is she still alive?
As far as I know, when she retired, she went to open up a bed and breakfast over in Gibson's Landing, BC, just north of Vancouver. You know where the Beachcombers was filmed.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the last I heard. But anyway.
yeah. So, oh yeah. So I sent out all of those letters, and my good friend Nick Deutsch, contacted me, and there was the classical guy that taught there because the Mohawk program is pretty much jazz oriented, but they do the prep the students. You know, if somebody doesn't get into a traditional program at a university because they need to upgrade their skills or whatever, they could do that at Mohawk College and take bonehead theory and the classical history and all of that stuff. So there was that component that they used to have here at when Vancouver Island University was Malaspina College. So it was the classical guy that was going on a sabbatical, and Nick was asking me, and I was like, "Could you teach this? Could you teach that?" And I was like, "I could probably do the music history." And he says, "Well, what about the bonehead theory and the analysis?" I was like, He goes, "Okay." He says, "I don't think this is a good fit." I was like, "I tend to agree." Because I didn't want to get into a situation where I would shit the bed, so to speak. And then, that's my first teaching gig. And yeah, that becomes my letter of recommendation. So then he called the next year and he's like, two guys are going on sabbatical, Mike Malone and Dave McMurdo. And he says, those are jazz courses. And I was like, yeah, I'm all over this. So I'm on the plane from, um, I guess it would have been leaving out of Calgary. I'm on the freaking plane and I'm like, I don't have a contract. And I'm going to Hamilton, Ontario without a contract. I'm like, okay, well, let's hope this cat's, it wasn't
Leap
even,
of faith.
yeah, I can't even say I had a gentleman's handshake with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically just over the phone and maybe emails at that time. Yep, I guess email. No, email would have been just starting maybe. Anyway, it all worked out. I get there and then I signed a contract. So I did that for the year, and then those Mike Malone and McMurdo since passed away. They came back, but they kept me on part time, and then I was able to get in part time at McMaster University, and then a sabbatical replacement came up at McMaster, and I did that. So that was good until I got established in terms of playing gigs and teaching privately and stuff like that. So I ended up there in Hamilton, Ontario.
I adjudicated with Dave McMurdo actually at the Brandon Jazz Festival in Manitoba.
The Prince of fellow.
He was my adjudication partner. We were two of us adjudicating at the same table. And actually, interestingly enough, we got along just fine.
Oh yeah, he did have that capability.
Yeah.
But I occasionally quote Dave McMurdo. It's one of my favorite quotes, and I do give him the credit. When a tune slows down, because if things slow down and speed up a little bit, it's not that big a deal. It's when it really slows down and it starts to freaking drag and die a slow death. He's like, for Pete's sake, it sounds like you're taking a dead dog for a walk.
I could totally see that coming out of his mouth. Totally.
I've never forgot. And there's this. I'll share this with you. I might have told you, but so I'm Hamilton was certainly manageable to go to Toronto, right? To go
Yep.
to hear concert music and shit like that. So of course back in this we're talking mid '90s. So the scene was still going on. There were several jazz clubs. There was a place in one of the hotels called the Judy Jazz. There was the Montreal Bistro. There was the Top of the Senator. There was the Rex. So I go to the Montreal Bistro and you walk in and the place was like this way, but the entrance was here. So you could see some of the audience, and then there was this audience, and the stage was over here. So there was the doorway. So I'm in the doorway. So basically, the doorway and the coat room and everything is between me and the stage. So I'm waiting to get in. We got there after the band had started. McMurdo had this way of getting to be very melancholy, so to speak. And he, what's the expression? Wearing your heart on your sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it was faked, but whatever. So he's on the mic, and of course he'd been in the Boss Brass, so he knew Jerry Toth, and he knew who had passed away, and he knew a couple other guys that had passed away. And he's on the mic, and he starts reminiscing about these guys, and he's starting to cry. He's like, "Ooh, I miss Jerry Toth," and I'm watching the people. I can hear this because they got the PA going; it's quite loud, and I'm watching the people, and the people are like snickering and they're laughing and they're like trying not to laugh, and I'm like, WTF, this guy's pouring out his heart on stage, and reminiscing about all these great musicians that he misses, and he's freaking crying. What the hell are they laughing about? So anyway, I walk in a little bit farther so that I can see the stage, and there's Alex Dean holding up his clarinet with a match underneath it. And of course, McMurdo's at the front of the stage and Alex Dean's behind him, right? So he can't see what's going on. But of course, the people in the audience can see. So as they're slowly losing their shit and not able to maintain their composure of not laughing, they're like chuckling harder. And McMurdo, he's like clearly wondering, I'm freaking on stage crying. People are laughing. They're laughing at me, or I better get my act together, or whatever. And finally, it dawns on them to turn around, and must have been a lighter, and there's Alex with the lighter, and McMurdo is like, "Will you stop that?" It was so funny, and I was like, "Yeah, that put an end to him reminiscing and crying on the bandstand because he wants to go see somebody cry on the bandstand, It's like, but
Funny.
that was.
I just wished Alex Dean happy birthday. It was his birthday, I think, a day or two ago on
Sweet.
Facebook. Yeah.
A very funny guy. I adjudicated him once.
So did I. I adjudicated Music Fest with him, and he came out with some doozies.
Now, did you know that clarinet story or not?
No, I've never heard that before. That's a gooder.
Let me share one more McMurdo story for you. I shouldn't be making fun of these things, but I'm going to.
Just so you know, we're at 27 minutes.
Okay, well, let's this is a cliffhanger then. Part 3.
Okay, we'll do a part 3 as well then. Okay, we'll have to do that. So, okay, folks, there's going to be a part 3. I didn't know there was going to, but there's going to. So there's going to be. So here we go. Okay, stopping now. Part 3 coming up. Okay, bye.